What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Locating Knowledge. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Neptune and Sun aspects, as well as breaking down the birth chart of the late great Frida Kahlo. So, let's get into it. Now, as you may know, Neptune is now direct, and I feel it's pretty synchronistic that I came across the movie based on the life of the Mexican artist Frida Kahlo, and right around this time when Neptune became direct. So curiously, I looked up, her chart, and one of the first things that jumped out to me was here, this Sun Neptune conjunction. Now, Frida Kahlo was born in 1907. When I looked her up online, there were actually sites who had ascendant for her. What I like to do in cases like this, where we honestly don't know, I like to use the solar chart of the individual. Now, this particular solar chart isn't to the exact degree of, the sun at the ascendant, but that's typically how you would do it. So when it comes to the solar chart, I'm always viewing the person as the center of their universe, and how they are consciously experiencing realities, and ultimately it can give us a lot of the same insights about an individual. So really, I said that this Sun Neptune contact really jumped out to me, and Sun and Neptune aspects are so interesting because the planets are very much so extremely different within nature. The sun is our ego, it's our conscious awareness and identity within this life. It is who we are, the I am. This is me. And Neptune is the opposite of that. Neptune is real associated with dissolution, the ethers, not of physical form, not of this world, spirituality, mysticism, inspiration, addiction, dreams, so many things. I really is strongly connected to the third eye and your pineal gland. All right. There's so much about Neptune, and I feel moved during this time, like to express about Neptune. So they'll likely be coming more on that. But it's a very interesting dynamic because you can't really grasp Neptune. So when a person has Sun aspecting Neptune, there's an extreme identity crisis. You can tell these people every day, you are beautiful, you are intelligent, you are everything, and they would still struggle with finding a sense of self within. These people within this life where most of us are really seeking to express our ego through that of some type of contribution or admiration of one of our talents and gifts, the Sun Neptune person, particularly when it comes to the conjunction and the opposition, they don't identify with that. They try to gain favor through self-sacrifice. It's almost to the extent of where a majority of others, particularly let's think of someone with a Sun-Mars combination, is like, I want to be the first person to the top or the first person to win, that competitive drive. Neptune dissolves all of that within them. Their thought is, I can get noticed by letting the individual get ahead of me, or I can get noticed by pouring into them and sacrificing myself for them. So it's a very strange scenario here in the world where you need a competitive ego to some extent. Sun Neptune people are very sensitive towards the environment, just like any Sun or Neptune in the first person would be. Because remember, Sun is your vitality, and it's very much associated with the body and how you feel in it. So the next thing with Sun and Neptune people, and this is where you really want to look at aspects to that, they may struggle with their health because Neptune is weakening that vitality of the Sun, and then it's almost as if it puts the body in such a state of sensitivity that then what you put into it further affects it. So for me, I suggest to all Neptune dominant people, particularly Sun and Neptune aspected people, stay away from substances. You know, in certain cases like the Trine, it may take, you know, more to wear you down, or it may not affect you as such, but most people, it continuously takes away from that vitality, especially if you fall into the path of addiction. So with Sun and Neptune, it's this eternal void, and it's almost in the sense of like the person isn't fully taking command of themselves, or consciously recognizing that they're sacrificing their self as a way of recognition. So yeah, I hope all of this makes sense to, you know, anybody out there with Sun and Neptune. But some of the great things about this combination, particularly the conjunction or the trine, is that of natural inspiration, natural intuitiveness, based on the how Sun and Neptune end up and can produce, you know, someone very spiritually in tune with spiritual, natural spiritual power. But above all, there's an ability to channel one's emotions, one's beliefs, one's expression of really where those signs are through that of art, putting it into some tangible artistic form. So, you know, Neptune is connected with the archetype of the artist, the poet, you know, someone who just flows from who taps into the unconscious and produces. So this leads me to Frida Kahlo, y'all. This definitely leads me to Frida Kahlo, and I really suggest you go ahead and check out the movie called Frida, made years ago, starring Salma Hayek. Really great, and to see the energy, and then watch the movies to see everything play out. So let's start here with Frida as this Cancer Sun conjunct Neptune. And then the interesting thing here also is that there is a Sun Jupiter, it is quite a big conjunction. You have a very tight conjunction of the Sun and Neptune, and then a looser one with involving Jupiter. So this Sun here is being infused with so much life, and from the egoistic perspective, their natural inclination is to spiritualize every experience, is to naturally seek out wisdom of their experiences. And the first person that the father draws wisdom, the first person that the individual, especially in this case Frida, draws inspiration or wisdom from is her father. All right, so Sun and Neptune by itself can represent an artistically inclined father, and inheriting from father in some type of artistic, spiritual way. Okay, and Frida Kahlo's father happened to be a painter, so it was a natural skill that she inherited and then was taught by her father, which I see this is the Jupiter here. Okay, the father, a lot of one thing with Sun and Jupiter people is that the father, because of his naturally expressive way and the child's viewing him as this beacon of wisdom, that child naturally comes out to the world as confident and expressive in what they know. What Father has taught them, they seek to express to others. And in this case, it is very so. Her father had all girls, and it's very interesting that Frida has this Sun opposition to Mars and Uranus. Now, on its own, this combination within a female can produce a woman who is eccentric, non-traditional, okay? Because you have the sign of rebellion, you have the planet of rebellion, sorry y'all, within the sign of tradition and the status quo, okay? So back then, what we saw here within Frida is that, and I brought up the fact that she had no brothers because she was a bit of a gender bender. There's a scene in the movie where for a family photo she put on a full suit, you know, and while her other sisters dressed up very feminine, and her father said, well, I always wanted a son. Very reflective of this opposition. So the individual is always seeking to form, to gain a sense of their own identity through that of rebellion or standing out. Whatever it is that is deemed to be traditional, they want to do the opposite. Hence, Sun oppose Uranus. Now, another thing here that is very interesting with this opposition. Whenever Mars and Uranus come together, whether this be by transit, whether this be in someone's chart, there is the potentiality for an accident, all right? And this amplifies based on whatever sign the conjunction is occurring in. This here is happening in the sign of Capricorn. So there's going to be a real reality, sudden reality faced, okay? And it just so happens that with Frida Kahlo, I think when she was about 18 or 19, she got into a serious bus accident. And, you know, some of the injuries that she sustained were towards her feminine parts, okay? And as you can see here with this is what we call a sesqui, almost like a semi-square kind of thing. The moon is involved, all right? And then there is a Chiron here in the 8th. So from this injury, Frida really shouldn't have survived, but once again, you see you have this Jupiter here, which is bringing luck, right? Bringing luck to the self, you know, and also luck in the sense of sudden happenings. What happens is she survives, but ultimately I believe that this has a lasting effect from the standpoint that she's never able to have children. So I see this as a common thing with Chiron in the 8th. Chiron in the 8th really indicates some type of wound in the individual's married life. And for Frida, this played out a couple different ways. But it played out in the sense of not being able to have children, and then also, you know, infidelity and things like that. The next interesting part here where we can also see her having difficulty with motherhood or conceiving, the ruler of her 4th house, which in this case is Venus, is here in the 12th house of losses. This, you know, it can just indicate not having children in this lifetime, and that kind of being a secret sorrow that you carry with you, right? But and it could be for a number of reasons. In her case, like I said, it was more of a physical thing, not being able to carry the child to term. So you have the ruler of the 4th in the 12th, and then you have the ruler of the 5th, which in this case is Pluto, Or even if you want to give it to Mars, once again being ruled by Saturn in Pisces, it's still some type of loss when it comes onto children, or some type of non-conventional relationship. So like having stepchildren, like in which she did, especially in 1907. I mean 1930s, 40s, and all that. That wasn't very common back then. Okay, so you see that sorrow. Now, what I want to get to here is her married life. Using this chart, interesting thing here, we see, so, at the, we have an influence of Capricorn in the 7th house, and then Mars and Uranus in that sign, which can indicate that the person is not only attracted to very Capricornian or political people in positions of authority, but also revolutionaries. And Frida Kahlo's husband was that. He was not only just a revolutionary, he was a fellow painter. Now, this brings me back to my point about the Sun Neptune person and projections, not really grasping their self. So in Frida's case, Frida was not, she was an artist by virtue of knowing how to draw. Her father was a painter, he taught her how to paint. She never pursued a career as an artist. She met her husband as like a tutor for her. She wanted him to like tutor her and help her develop her skill, but never actually took her skill serious. The interesting thing throughout the film is that her husband consistently tells her she's an amazing artist. And every time he does so, you see the self-doubt. You see that she doesn't believe it. And she continuously puts into her husband, and he is the artist. He lives out her dream. He expresses her ego for her. So there's a very, very interesting concept that plays out with Sun Neptune people, particularly in the conjunction in opposition, whether it be your father, whether it be your partner, your brother. There, some part of yourself, for better or worse, that you are not consciously owning, other people will own that for you. And this can manifest in very strange ways. It's almost to the extent that like you found out about a competition rather than entering the competition for yourself, or the lottery, right? Like you go and buy a lottery ticket for someone and give it to them and they win. Like you're not owning your desire, you're playing it safe through others. So with Frida, we saw this a lot. She expressed her revolutionary ideals, and in turn was also influenced, by her by her partner to a certain extent. So she acted out her ego through him. Now, with this, it's back to that term of self-sacrifice. Now, with it, we see here a Venus-Pluto conjunction in the sign of Gemini. This is intense love, and anybody out there who's experienced Venus-Pluto understands this. Okay, so in Frida's case, there was a lot of infidelity. There was a lot of deception, and this is evidenced in the film. Okay, and even her intuitive nature picking up on when he was blatantly lying to her face. But the real interesting thing here that I see is that at the same time, it's like there's a transformative quality towards the partnership. And overall with Frida, the partnership, it transformed her to the point through all that she poured into him, and all the more betrayal that her husband gave her. It forced her to eventually love herself and stand on her own, okay, and produce her own art. And as the story goes, they actually got back together and like helped each other later in life, you know, healing and things of that nature. Okay. So there was a lot here. It was a transformative, and it helped her become a better her, or become more conscious of, you know, what she was capable of. All right. Now the next thing here, when you look at the aspects towards this Venus and the Saturn, is that their relationship lacked a strong foundation. And a lot of times, people with Venus square Saturn, there's an underlying belief that you won't be happy, or you don't deserve to be happy in partnership. So it therefore manifests in a way where all the things that you fear, Saturn, manifest into your relationships. So I'm always telling people you should really like become conscious of that, do affirmations and things like that to reprogram, you know, that thinking. But another thing that you have to do is that you have to be realistic. Now, going back to this being Frida and her being different and eccentric, okay? One way in which she went wrong is another Sun Neptune thing, is she knew who her husband was. She knew he was misogynistic. She knew he was unfaithful, and she lied to herself. Self-deception. She lied to herself and believed that she could tolerate it, which in the end it turns out that she couldn't. So part of this is influencing through this revolutionary eccentric approach towards partnership, but Venus square Saturn was saying that to some extent you needed to have a certain level of reality or realistic thinking or approach within your partnership. So I always tell people with Venus Saturn contact, friends with benefits is not for you. It's just gonna lead to a lot of headaches and things of that nature. Okay. My closing thoughts on Frida. Also, one thing I forgot to mention here is the 8th house, really being Aquarius, this Mars and Uranus together, and in the 12th house action, Frida was very bi-curious. She had her fair share of, you know, affairs with women. I found that interesting as well. And overall, like, I just saw her as a very sensual person, and her art really was reflected of being able to unconsciously capture her emotions. So, like, one of the key things about her Sun Neptune conjunction was that it was in Cancer, and a lot of that was tied towards emotion, and you can feel that through her art. Had this occurred in, you know, like the sign of Gemini, it might have been one where she was teaching a lot through the art, or the art was just very versatile, with the opposite of her. She had a strict theme. It was all about her. It was all about her feelings. It was very personal. But all right. This is my interpretation of Frida Kahlo's birth chart, as well as, you know, Sun Neptune aspects. Feel free to chime in. Let me know what you think. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, you can do so now. If you need a reading, holla at me. Till next time, peace.